Even though we talk about some horrible creatures on this series, we sometimes get some that only want to help humans, not hurt them. And in response, we treat them terribly. Well, unfortunately, we have another one just like that. One that some enthusiasts are still trying to find to this day because they are convinced that this creature is still out there somewhere roaming the Highlands. The Ghillie. But before we get started, it's time to clean yourself up. Manscaped. This video is brought to you by Manscaped.com, the global brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. Summer comes to an end and autumn approaches, but despite the lack of sweaty ball weather, Manscaped has still got you covered. Manscaped offers the best tools and liquid formulations to solve all of the issues that cause you to stink. There is the Weed Whacker to finally get rid of your ear and nose hair, and I've used that one quite a lot. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant because, well, you know why. And the Lawnmower 4.0. I know some of us probably want to keep our hair in the colder months, and you can, but it's a good idea to keep it neat. And there is no need to worry about sharp scissors or anything that will make you recoil a little bit. The Lawnmower 4.0 is waterproof, cordless, and made with skin-safe technology to reduce nicks and cuts. The Manscaped Body Wash and 2-in-1 Shampoo and Conditioner Duo has helped me cut my shower time down so I can get on with more important things, and also introducing the Performance Package 4.0. Manscaped products are all made with all natural hydrating ingredients. These products are all paraben-free, cruelty-free, dye-free and vegan. And for a limited time, you will get all of this plus 2 free gifts: the Shed Travel Bag and the Manscaped Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs. Join over 6 million other men worldwide who trust Manscaped, and go to manscaped.com today to get 20% off, including free international shipping when you use my promo code Dankula at the checkout. Manscaped, always use the right tool on your tool. The Ghillie roughly translates as the dark-haired lad, and he was either a male mountain spirit, a nature fae, or a fairy. He was said to have lived in a birchwood near the Lochadruing area of Ghillie, which is in the northwest of the Highlands in Scotland. The wood he is supposed to have lived in is supposedly 2 miles away from the Ruaidhrí lighthouse. The Ghillie was mostly seen in the later half of the 19th century, and the woods that he was allegedly sighted in are located in a dip between some hills in the area. But we couldn't pinpoint exactly where, and we think the area might have been deforested. It is thought that the reason that the Ghillie came to our world is because he was banished by the Queen of the Fae, possibly for breaking some ancient archaic rules. And in his banishment, he kept to himself by living in the countryside, but kind of close to human settlements. The woods, however, were perfect for him because the Ghillie was very fond of trees, with his favourite being the birch. And for 40 years, the Ghillie was seen very often by many people in the local area. But the Ghillie always seemed to avoid adults, but he would show loyalty and kindness to children, as we can see in one of the most famous stories about the Ghillie. On a summer evening, a young local girl named Jessie McCrae wandered into the woods, and she ended up travelling too deep and got lost. After panicking and desperately trying to find her way out of the woods, she realised that she was completely lost and she gave up. She then sat under a tree and started to cry. Upon hearing her cries, Jessie was approached by a 3-foot tall, scruffy humanoid creature with dark hair. and it was dressed in a cloak made of leaves and moss that had been harvested from nearby trees. Jessie, at first, was obviously terrified of the creature and didn't know if it meant her harm. Back then the world was full of superstition, and being in the woods alone was one of the most dangerous places to be, especially for a child, mostly due to wild animals. This small creature was the Ghillie, but instead of doing anything bad to Jessie, he looked after her until the next morning, all the while making her feel safe and comfortable and talking to her throughout the night. But what they talked about is still a mystery, because Jessie was the only person that the Ghillie ever spoke to. But it must have been a nice conversation, since Jessie relaxed as she realised that the creature didn't mean her any harm. As soon as the sun came up the next day, the Ghillie signalled to Jessie to follow him, and the Ghillie took her right to the edge of the forest and showed her the path home. Jessie obviously would have then went back to the village and told all of the locals about how she was saved, and describing what the creature looked like. This caused rumours of the Ghillie to spread throughout the area, and as a result, a group of Mackenzie dignitaries were invited on a hunt by the landowner, Sir Hector Mackenzie of Ghillie. Their plan was to capture the Ghillie. The hunters gathered at the home of one of Mackenzie's tenants, and they were given a hot meal before heading out on the hunt. They also didn't care if they caught the Ghillie alive. They were intending to shoot it dead. Despite the Ghillie rescuing a child, being kind-natured, and clearly not being a threat, the hunters were just superstitious, and they saw any kind of fae as a bad omen. So they didn't want such creatures living nearby. After meticulously searching throughout the night, not one of the hunters could find a single trace of the Ghillie, and eventually they gave up. And since the night of the hunt, the Ghillie was never seen or heard from again. Almost like he knew what was coming and knew the ill intentions of the hunters. However, there are some other stories told about the Ghillie that aren't so wholesome. Some believe that the Ghillie was a far darker spirit, and it could actually be aggressive and territorial with a special dislike towards humans. Some said that if you walked alone in the forest at night, a long-armed creature would wrap around you and squeeze you, never letting you go. Others also said that the Ghillie would crush your body into chunks of meat and use the remains as compost to help the forest grow. While this version of the Ghillie is nightmare fuel, it wouldn't be the first time that people have made up horrific negative stories in order to vilify the unknown. In order to get people on their side, like the hunters that desperately wanted to shoot the Ghillie due to their superstition. In the modern day, there has been some speculation that what Jessie saw could have just been a forest-dwelling midget person who is vertically challenged, or someone with a medical condition such as a growth disorder. And while the disappearance of the Ghillie may have seemed mysterious to people at the time, would you hang around if you were being hunted by the fucking locals for the kind deed of saving a child's life? No, I don't think you'd hang around either. And this is the thing that I have with the Ghillie. Forest hermits were a very common thing in Scotland back in the day. We even still have them now. We actually have a bunch of guys that live in the wild in the Highlands, just Ted Kaczynski in it, minus sending the packages. And also, anyone who was classed as a freak, for example, someone with dwarfism, would more than likely have been excluded from society, and they would have gone off to live on their own. Or maybe Jessie was just exaggerating a little when she described the Ghillie as children are known to do. Now, unlike our other Celtic myths, I actually believe Jessie's story. Because in her story, nothing magical actually happened. Now, if the guy was talking to animals floating in the air, summoning fairies, or making the trees walk around like fucking ents, or firing lightning bolts from his arse, then yeah, okay, that's a magical story, and I wouldn't believe any of that. But what actually happened was the guy just sat there and talked to Jessie until the sun came up and then showed her the way home. There's nothing magical about that at all. That's totally believable. In fact, I completely believe that happened. But instead of being a mythical creature, I think that it was just a random forest hermit who was doing an act of kindness. And a little fact from the modern day that some of you might have already known is that the ghillie doo may be where the ghillie suit gets its name from. Ghillie suit is a camouflage suit designed to blend into the environment by being covered in foliage like leaves and moss. Basically, what the ghillie doo apparently wore as clothes. The Lovat Scouts, a Scottish Highland regiment, were the first military unit to actually start using ghillie suits, and in 1916 they went on to become the British Army's first sniper unit. The Lovat Scouts originally worked as professional stalkers and gamekeepers, and the ghillie suit was a major advantage when it came to hunting. And as it turns out, it's also a major advantage in combat. Either way, some old superstitious people will still say that if you come across a fairy, then you had best be cautious, because some of them can be extremely temperamental. Some could ignore you, which is probably for the best. Some could do you a kindness. Some could do you a kindness for a price. And others could be a living nightmare. But as far as we know, if you are ever lost in the woods, you needn't fear being approached by the ghillie doo.
It's Count Dankula on YouTube. Everybody should subscribe.